Okay, welcome. It's been a very long day here in Watford and Williston. We've literally been up since early. Patrick took us out last night. We actually met with the Director of Economic Development. You know, the one thing that we say in offshore property, it's all about the partners and the information. And really, this is just a quick little video. We just wanted to introduce Patrick. Before I get into Patrick, John, I know I actually didn't have the privilege of meeting Patrick last time I was here. I was going off to New York to meet Brendan and our buyers in New York. And you and Henny met Patrick, and I know the reports when we met you, I think in Atlanta a day or two later, you guys were off the charts with excitement after having met Patrick with his experience. So what was your feedback, a little bit of that, and then we can get into Patrick and who he is.
I know that Scott's always echoing the quality of the partners on the ground, Thankfully, we have a chairman who's pretty experienced, and when you have that kind of experience, you tend to be able to identify and attract and keep around us partners on the ground that kind of mirror that background, that kind of caliber person. And we had we've been hunting for really good people to help us identify opportunities on the ground, to help us assess who delivers, who doesn't, who's experienced, who's not, who's getting services to their properties, who are getting into the position to actually develop, that we can JV with locally because we can't do it ourselves, obviously. And so we came across Patrick in kind of a fluke meeting one night at dinner, and just completely blew us away. He's like a walking encyclopedia. Hopefully we can bring him out to South Africa. But he's a walking encyclopedia.
That's certainly my intention, so watch the space.
And so if you ever get a chance to meet Patrick, hopefully it's not after 40 hours of traveling because your head will be spinning and you'll have jet lag. But the guy is awesome. He's phenomenal. And so we're actually we're using their group to help us with the engineering and the permitting and everything that we have to do. Also the design for the commercial developments that we're doing in the area. If you ever get to hear from him, it's actually just an honor and a privilege to be able to hear from him. And also, because they are who they are, they attract other tens in the area, developers, labor, investors, everybody. And they're tied in. So when I say tied in, you're talking about going to church with like the families who work at the city and the county and things like that, and some of the other big players in the area. And you really have to kind of be that in this climate here, because if you're not, you don't have those relationships, and you don't have that kind of politics, and you're not gonna go very far, especially up here.
I mean, just very quickly, we were here in whatever it was, July, and we've got a very long video with a lot of the facts and the stats and everything that's going on here. So I don't want to go into all those details because you can watch that other video. But Patrick, just quickly, tell us a little bit about yourself. What's happening here? How long you've been here? What the opportunity is?
Great. Well, thank you, Scott and John. I really appreciate those remarks. It's nice to hear that our hard work and effort here is actually recognized, and it's been a pleasure working with you guys. I've been here 4 years in Williston, North Dakota. I am originally from the Aspen, Colorado area. I came up here to build 40 houses. And within 3 to 4 weeks, we decided that it wasn't 40, it was 4,000. We needed to build 4,000 homes. And I was working with a couple different investors. And since then, what I've been able to do in those 4 years is learn the pulse of the region by attending almost every city council, planning meeting, board of county commissioners, planning meetings also at the county level, and then spending a lot of time at the state level figuring out how money is funded into this area, where the money's coming from, how it's getting here, how we can get it here, how we can do grants and stuff like that for schools, roads, infrastructure, emergency services, and so forth and so on. So what I've been able to do is come into town, didn't know anybody, just kind of was a fly on the wall, learned how this process was done, and all of a sudden I had a 100-acre parcel that I had to bring forward. And I modeled myself after another gentleman who was the only other person getting stuff done named Rick Luthold. And I watched him get through the process and what the key words were that they liked and what they didn't like in their process. And we were able to get a project that we were told would never go through, be approved, and it's now ready for 1,344 apartments and about 275,000 square feet of commercial. And so you'll see that vertical starting to happen next year. In the meantime, we've been able to help a lot of other people bring stuff forward to get approved, like the sewer plant that we talked about today. That's the first one in the state that is not connected to a municipality that's going to serve multiple subdivisions. So the whole thing that we have done is escalated to the point now where we're actually bringing forward over 4,000 single-family homes and almost 3 million square feet of commercial space. and about 1 million square feet of industrial. So that's really, really exciting. We're also in the process of bringing forward a rail spur, which is a transloading facility to take the oil out of here. The trucks or the pipelines bring that oil to that facility, and then they put it on the trains, on Warren Buffett's trains, and take them out of here to go east and west. So
just before I sorry to butt in, but
Yeah.
just before I ask Brendan a question, you actually you beat me to it, because we can go into everything. It's got the number one Caterpillar plant selling. It's got the number 2 in the country,
two
Walmart, and
Yep.
2 in the country.
McDonald's.
That's all great. But the bottom line is Warren Buffett is probably the most respected investor worldwide. And a lot of people will sit on the fence and say, yeah, it's an oil play and it might go up and it might go down. It could be a boom bust cycle. Tell us just a little bit about the Warren Buffett thing.
Well, Warren Buffett came into the region about 3 years ago, and he bought Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad. And the main reason was to be able to start to ship oil on it. He wasn't concerned about shipping freight. He wasn't, although that's a byproduct of what he's been doing. He bought it for $46 billion. And if you read, as of January 1st this year, he's made $48 billion in 3 years' time. He took the oil from, as I explained this morning on the whiteboard, 2% of the oil 2 years ago was taken out of this region by rail. Now 75% of that, they think it's even more, is going out of here on rail, going to the east and west coast. So Burlington North, and the only way to get the oil east and west is by rail. So that's really what's happening. Right now there are 10 rail spurs on the line that go through this region. They need another 10 in order to keep up with the capacity and the amount of oil that they expect to come out of the ground. So that's, so he's way ahead of the curve. He took the big risk. $46 billion is a huge risk. And who was to know 2 years ago that the majority of the oil that was going to leave this region was going to go by train? Nobody ever
Well, I mean,
suspected.
fascinating, and I would suggest people go and check this out. Apparently, Rockefeller did exactly the same thing when Texas started. Brendan, from your perspective, I mean, that's exactly what Rockefeller did. He had the oil and he controlled the rail. He had the oil and the railway lines, and it's just amazing. History repeating itself, whatever it is, nearly 100 years later. Tell me, Brendan wasn't here the last time when Henny and John and I came. I mean, John discovered it. He brought Henny and I here. We were super excited. We've been telling everyone at home how super exciting it is. You weren't here. What's been your experience over the last 24 hours?
It's blown my mind. I've never seen anything like this ever before, and I don't think I will see it again in my lifetime. It's incredible. I mean, the fact that to be able to witness a boom happening from the ground up and watch the play between all the different problems. Like they need more people, but they can't bring more people until they got housing. But they can't get housing unless they bring people to build the houses. And then they need infrastructure to build those houses, so they need to bring people to do the sewers and the water treatment plants and the power and everything. So it's all these different factors that are limiting it. But at the same time, there's money pumping out the ground at a rate that is unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, the money's fixing everything. It's bringing the people. We met at a garage today, and where we pulled in, there was a guy sitting there in his truck, sleeping in his truck, right next to where we pulled in at the garage. And it's purely because he's a new arrival here, hasn't made his money yet. You met two guys last night, 22, 23-year-old guys that are making $130,000 a year. I mean, the money's fixing all those infrastructure problems, but it's watching the play between them and realizing that this is not billion-dollar plays, it's trillion-dollar plays.
Well, that's exactly what Joe said this evening.
And it is truly is trillion-dollar plays. I mean, we talked today about Continental and Whiting Oil, the number one and number two drillers here. Between the two of them, they're spending $7 billion within 50-mile radius of Williston just on development. That's two companies. There's 29 of those companies. Never mind everything else that goes on. It's hundreds of billions of dollars that are being spent here yearly right now, and there's no place to spend it. So what are they doing? They're coming here. They're earning their money, and they're leaving and spending it somewhere else. And North Dakota is striving very hard to make it happen, and this become, in essence, they last night we talked about the comparables, what this equates to. It really equates to what Houston was 100 years ago. And in Houston, the one little well I spoke about was the spillover well. It was in 1898, and next to it, about 5 miles away or 8 miles away, was this little sleepy town called Houston, Texas. Had 30,000 people in it, and now has 2.4 million. Now that is 100 years later. However, It's just the beginning. We're at that stage, and they expect
And
this.
I mean,
oil
just to butt in there, I'm not going to go into it in a moment, but I mean, the stats between the amount of oil being pumped out the ground here in Texas are ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, something like 5,900 wells, 98, I don't know, 98 million barrels, and Texas is like 134,000 barrels, but they've got like 150,000 wells. You know,
Yeah.
it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So a lot of the trends that you're saying, there is every possibility that in 100 years it could be in that direction. You know?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I want to just ask one last question. You know, it's very difficult when you come into a place like this. There is so much opportunity. I mean, you could come in and build roads. You would make money. You could come
You
in
could
and
rent cars. You
could,
open
you
a
could
pizza
open
store.
a garage. You could do
An ice
medical.
store. You sell ice.
You could do anything. I mean, we met a guy last night that literally had 25 restaurants in Phoenix, listed it, then sold it, came up here, and he's just opened 4 in one of the better restaurants that you got us dinner at. My question to you is, we've got $10 million. What do we do next? You know, where is the opportunity? What do you used to do?
You know, and that was a good question. I was asked that today, and I suggest, and I think John is really turned me on to that. Is there's a need here for commercial space that doesn't exist, and it needs to be filled because that's the next phase of things. You know, doctors, lawyers, dentists, oil people. They're all looking for a nice place to put their office. Myself, I mean, we live, you look at our office, we want to be in a nice building. We want to be downtown Williston, but it doesn't exist. We're 13 miles out of town in a 25-year-old building that's falling down, but it's because it's the only place that's available. So, those kind of things, that's what I truly believe is the next step, because then that's going to bring people that come here and they see that there's professional services that they can get. They can get their their cosmetology done. They can get their good dentist work done. Listen, you can't get into a dentist here because they're so full. You have to go to Minot or you have to go to Fargo, which is 8 hours away, to get your teeth fixed. The doctors, the same thing. A doctor's office, a medical building, a clinic, anything like that is A+ stuff that is needed here desperately, and the state is willing to help you with. There's a lot of funding that I can turn you guys onto, and grants and stuff for if you start to do that kind of thing, that we can actually go and get some funding to help you with those and there's tax incentives also that can be done. If you're doing business here, your taxes, you can say, well, I can earmark all my state taxes to go back to schools in Williston, North Dakota, or I can earmark it to go back to government offices, or I can earmark it for roads on this street. Those like 58th Street we were on today, which is a dirt road. Well, you can earmark all your taxes that are paid to the state of North Dakota to go to that project.
Jeez.
So little things like this you just can't come in and take advantage of. So
It's all about the
Well, it would
information.
take
and
you
partners,
4
isn't it?
years and a hell of a lot of connections to do
Yeah.
it on the ground, living here and being committed to it.
There's 2 last things I'd like to say. And I think the first one that is so important is that we've got 12 investors that have come with us. And I cannot tell you how complimentary they've been of the people you've introduced them to and the experience they've had in the last 24 hours. And I think that's just testament to these trips coming over, the relationships you built, John, Patrick, knowing the people on the ground. Because if you think about it, what we've learned in 24 hours, you've learned in 4 years.
Yeah.
But we've been able to extrapolate that out within 24 hours. And that's the value of coming on these trips. It's the value of partnering with what we're doing. And it really, really is powerful. The last thing I'd like to say is that Henny, who's our business partner and who we all respect quite highly, you've met him as well.
Yes.
He started in Australia with $4 million, turned it into $40 million in less than 4 years, 4.5 years to be exact. Listed that company for $200 million, all in residential and commercial development. And the one thing, he's listed 2 companies, and the one thing that he's all about is firstly picking the team and finding the right players. And I cannot explain to you how impressed he was with you in this market. He's all about finding the number 1 player, and you're that man in terms of what he said, which is really, really good to have met you myself. And the second thing he said, in business, you either diversify, dominate, or die. And what we decided in this market was, yes, there's a lot of opportunity. But in that commercial space and that medical space, that's where we want to dominate and really, control between Watford and Williston. And, as they always say, it's not the guys, that dig the gold up in a gold rush. It's the guys that sell the spades that actually build the big businesses, and
Exactly.
we just want to sell spades. You know,
That's-
1,300
long-term
1,300 businesses have come into town and everything else. And so really, it's with, you know, I mean, we could talk for days, but I think the most important thing is we want to thank you for your time,
You're very
your
welcome.
experience. It's been phenomenal, and I really look forward to, as John said, sharing it with all our investors.